Yes, that is true. But, have been following demonstrations in France for almost 7 years as a journalist with Mediapart. And as a matter of fact, I've seen things like this before in France, at least if you're talking about the level of violence that took place yesterday. I'm thinking especially of the Yellow Vest movement, le mouvement des Gilets jaunes, almost 5 years ago in December 2018. There was a very high level of violence, especially in Paris. But maybe we can note that there is something very rare that happened yesterday. It's the number of people who decided to demonstrate. There were at least 800,000 people in the streets, while there had already been 12 demonstrations before. So it's a very large number of people. So if you take that in mind, you have to understand that the violent demonstrators are quite a small minority. In each major city, I would say the most there were a few hundred, or maybe in Paris 1,000 violent demonstrators, and there were hundreds of thousands of demonstrators in Paris. So it's not of course it's not the majority.
Yeah, I understand. So, by and large, they were more peaceful, but there have been claims that there was a different element amongst the protesters that had sparked this violence. Mm-hmm. Who were they?
Mm-hmm. There was a more violent approach, it's true. And the people who choose this strategy are generally known as autonomous demonstrators. They generally come from the far left, and they do not necessarily know each other, but they coordinate through social networks, and they form what is called a Black Bloc. I think you have those also in your part of the world. The aim is confronting the police. In theory, it's used to show that the state can be violent against its citizens, but in fact, it's also a way to express anger, of course. Yeah. And you have to know that these demonstrators generally position themselves, go in front of the unions in the demonstration, and that they do not like the labor unions. They are looking for violence, for clashes, and they criticize the unions, and they accuse them of being useless or sometimes even traitors, because they want to negotiate, to have a conversation with the government, and they want peaceful demonstration. And those autonomous demonstrators do not wish to let them have their peaceful demonstration.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. President Macron has said he would work to try and heal the divisions after, he pushed those reforms through. Is there any hope of that at this point? Are there even talks going on?
No, I'm not sure at all about that. No, at the moment there are no talks, but there may be some talks in the next days. The leaders of the unions are discussing about this issue just right now. But for the moment, President Macron has shown above all that he does not want to listen to the unions or to the demonstrators or even to the polls that show that a very large majority of French people are against the pension reform. So it's not easy. Maybe the only category of the population that is not totally hostile to this reform are the retired people, for whom the reform will not apply. So it's quite a question. Emmanuel Macron and his government say that they want to go back to dialogue and to move forward and to tackle other issues related to work or wages. But for now, the union leaders just do not want to move forward, and they always ask, and they still ask, that their voice be heard.
Yeah, it is an interesting dilemma because, when countries like Australia look at France, where retirement age here is as high as 67 for some people, it does seem like 62 to 64 is quite a small jump, and that France is really out of step with many other developed nations. This is not something that the unions want to really sort of grapple with.
No, because you have to understand that in France, the age of 62 is not. You can, if you want, retire at 62, but you will not be paid the full wage or the full pension. A lot of people still have to wait, maybe already have to wait until 67. So the age of 62 is not that easy. And of course, if you say to people, okay, you will have to work, you will have to wait 2 more years. In fact, it may be that you have to be unemployed 2 more years. And that is one of the biggest issues. Almost half of the people between 60 and 62 years old don't work, so they are unemployed. So what the government is saying is just, well, you'll have to wait 2 more years before being retired.
Well, that is, that is fascinating. Has not necessarily come across in the protests that we've looked at, and I guess sometimes they are often simplistically presented. Good to have you on, Dan, and I'm sure you'll continue to cover these protests.
Sure, I will. Thank you very much.